All right, so we're diving into a case today that's, well, it's a missing person case.
Okay.
But what makes this one so interesting is that we have just tons and tons of audio.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, 911 calls, interviews, you name it. It's like we're right there in the room with the investigators.
That's amazing. You can get so much more from audio than just a written report.
Right.
Yeah.
So much more revealing,
Yep.
like how someone says something.
Exactly. You can pick up on hesitation or maybe even a lie.
Yeah, for sure. So let's get into it. The case we're looking at is the disappearance of Vallette Torres.
Okay.
She's a mother of 3 from Miramar, Florida, and she vanished on April 2nd, 2012.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing.
Okay.
Her husband, Sid, didn't report it missing for 2 whole days.
Wow. 2 days. That's a really long time. I mean, especially for your spouse, you know?
Right. And we actually have the audio of that 911 call.
You do.
Yeah, and it's strange. He's calling from his car. He doesn't want to go home, and his timeline is super vague. Plus, there's this weird moment where it sounds like he makes a Freudian slip.
Oh, really? Like he almost reveals something he's trying to hide.
Exactly. Like his subconscious is betraying him.
Wow. Consciousness of guilt. That's fascinating.
Yeah, so let's take a listen to that 911 call now. So he very clearly says, Sunday, I definitely did it. And then he like stumbles and tries to correct himself.
Whoa. What do the investigators make of that?
Well, it definitely raises some red flags. Like,
Yeah.
what did he do on Sunday? What's he trying to hide?
Yeah, that's suspicious for sure. Especially since the dispatcher didn't ask him anything about Sunday.
Right. It just came out of nowhere.
Very interesting. So you've got a late report, a strange 911 call, and a missing mom.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Where do they even start with a case like this?
Well, it's all about the timeline, figuring out who was where and when, and trying to find any inconsistencies.
Like a puzzle.
Exactly. So let's start with what we know. On Friday night, Vallette had dinner with a coworker named Zoe.
Okay?
Meanwhile, Sid was out with their kids. They went on a train ride and saw a movie.
Sounds normal enough.
Yeah, but there's a catch.
Okay, what is it?
Vallette and Sid were separated.
Oh, really?
Yep, married for 13 years, but separated for 6 months.
Huh.
Vallette had a boyfriend, and Sid claimed he'd already filed for divorce.
Okay, so there's some tension there already.
Yeah, for sure. Then, early Saturday morning, around 5:17 a.m., security footage shows Vallette's car back at their gated community.
Okay.
And you see her walking towards their house.
Yeah.
And that's the last time anyone sees her.
So she never leaves the house again.
Right. At least not that they can. So now the focus shifts to what happened inside that house.
Makes sense.
Right.
So what happens next? Do they go talk to the husband?
Yep. Detectives go to interview Sid at their home. And you can hear him trying to paint this picture of a happy, loving relationship.
Even though they were separated.
Exactly. Which is a little strange. But then they interview Vallette's 13-year-old daughter.
Oh.
And she says that she heard her mom crying that night. And Sid kept saying, no, you wake up, over and over.
Oh my gosh. That completely changes things.
Right. It goes from maybe she just left to something bad happened in that house.
Absolutely. So what does Sid say about all this?
Well, let's listen to a bit of that interview with him. He just seems so calm,
Yeah.
Almost detached.
Yeah, and he says he has a lawyer for the divorce but can't remember the lawyer's name.
Exactly. Red flag, right.
Big time. Why would you not remember your lawyer's name during a divorce?
It just doesn't add up. At this point, it seems like Sid's our guy.
Yeah, I'd be suspicious too.
But then we meet the boyfriend, Zoe.
Oh, okay.
And he is completely cooperative with the police, gives them alibis, lets them see his phone and bank records.
So he's basically ruling himself out.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And then the case takes another turn. The neighbors start calling 911.
What do they say?
One says that Sid was acting really strange after Vallette went missing.
Okay. That's not good.
And then another neighbor calls and says that Vallette told her that Sid had threatened to kill her.
Whoa, hold on. He threatened her.
Yeah, and that he would make their kids orphans.
This is getting scary. Now it really seems like something terrible might have happened.
I know, right? So with all of this, the police decide they want to get Sid to take a polygraph.
Oh, a lie detector test.
Well, actually, it's called a computer voice stress analyzer.
What's that?
It analyzes the microtremors in a person's voice to see if they're lying.
Interesting. So it's not just about the results, but also how they act during the test.
Right. Like there's this moment where he's just calmly writing checks at the police station while he's waiting to take the test.
While his wife is missing.
Yeah. It's bizarre.
It's like he's not even concerned.
I know. But anyway, the test ends up being inconclusive because of a machine malfunction.
No, they're back to square one.
It seems like it. But then through interviews with friends, The detectives uncover something really disturbing.
Oh no, what is it?
It turns out Sid had been spying on Vallette.
Spying on her? How?
He'd put spyware on her phone and computer. He could read her text messages, listen to her calls, even turn on her microphone remotely.
Are you serious? That's insane.
But we have recordings of his friends talking
Right.
about how he would brag about this.
Wow. So this goes way beyond just jealousy.
Yeah, it's controlling and manipulative.
Yeah.
It's like he had to know her every move.
And of course, he never mentioned any of this to the police.
Nope, not a word. Which makes you wonder what else he's hiding.
This just keeps getting worse.
So now we've got a missing wife, a husband who's acting super suspicious,
Mhm.
and evidence of stalking and control.
What a mess. What do they do next?
Well, they still haven't found Vallette, so they start searching areas near their home where she was last seen,
Okay, and?
and they find a garbage bag. It's emitting this horrible odor, and it turns out it contains human remains.
Oh my God, they found her.
Well, that's what everyone thinks. But then they do DNA testing, and it turns out,
It's not her.
nope, the remains belong to someone else entirely.
This is crazy.
I know, right? This case is just full of twists and turns.
So now they have to figure out who this other person is and how they're connected to Vallette.
Exactly. It's like a whole new mystery has been added to the investigation.
This is going to be a long one.
You got that right.
I can't wait to see where this goes.
Me neither.
So they have a whole other case on their hands now.
Yeah, basically. Like, are these remains connected to Vallette's disappearance? Or is this something completely separate?
It's almost like someone's trying to throw them off the scent.
Right. Like maybe Sid's involved in something else even bigger that he's trying to cover up.
I mean, it's possible. This could be way more complicated than we initially thought.
Definitely. So where do the investigators go from here? With this new information, I mean,
Well, the first thing they need to do is figure out who these remains belong to.
right. Yeah, like who is this person and how did they end up in a garbage bag?
Exactly. That means digging into missing persons reports, doing forensic testing, all that stuff.
Oh man, this is getting intense.
Yeah,
Like a real life crime drama.
it really is. And they still need to look into the whole divorce thing, too.
Right. Oh yeah, for sure. Like, did Sid actually file for divorce? Who's his lawyer?
Right? It might seem insignificant, but those details could be huge.
Yeah, maybe he's lying about the whole thing.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have
What are the big takeaways for our listeners so far? What should they be paying attention to as this case unfolds?
Well, I think this case shows just how important those first few days of a missing person investigation are.
Yeah, like that 911 call and the initial interviews.
Right. Even the little things can be super important.
Like they always say, the devil is in the details.
Exactly. And in this case, there are a lot of details that don't make sense.
Totally. And then there's the whole technology aspect. Like on the one hand, we have the security footage, which helped investigators a lot.
Mhm.
But then on the other hand, we have that spyware Sid was using to track Vallette.
Right. Which is really scary when you think about it.
Like it shows how technology can be used for both good and bad.
Absolutely. And we also can't forget about the witnesses, the neighbors and friends who gave their accounts of what happened.
Yeah, their testimony helps us understand the relationship between Sid and Vallette.
And sometimes they reveal things that investigators might have missed.
Okay, so let's say you were in charge of this investigation.
Oh.
What would you do next? What details would you focus on?
Well, those unidentified remains would definitely be my top priority.
Okay, yeah.
I'd want to know everything about them, who they were, how they died, if there's any link to Vallette's disappearance.
It seems like a good place to start.
I think so. I mean, answering those questions could be the key to solving the whole thing.
It's like a puzzle and we're still missing a bunch of pieces.
Yep. And we need to keep an open mind here. You know, maybe Vallette left on her own. Maybe she's in hiding.
It's possible, I guess.
We can't rule anything out until we have more information.
Yeah, that's true. These cases are always so unpredictable.
Exactly. That's what makes them so fascinating.
So what stands out to you the most about this case so far? And what should our listeners be thinking about as we continue to explore this?
Well, we have to remember that we're only seeing a small part of the investigation.
Right. Like the parts that have been made public.
Exactly. There's probably a lot more going on behind the scenes that we don't know about.
So we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg.
Exactly. And that's where our listeners come in. They can take the information we've discussed and come up with their own theories about what might have happened.
I love that.
It's like a big puzzle that everyone can try to solve.
Okay, so what do you think happened to Vallette? Based on everything we've talked about, what's your gut feeling?
That's tough to say for sure without all the facts, you know?
Of course.
But the evidence right now doesn't look good for Sid. The late report, that weird 911 call, the lies about the lawyer, the spyware, the threats.
It's a lot to point the finger at him.
It really is. But it's important to stay objective. We have to look at all the evidence and consider all the possibilities.
I agree. So do you think those unidentified remains are just a coincidence? Or could they be connected to Vallette's disappearance somehow?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
It could be a total coincidence, just a completely unrelated case that happened to pop up at the same time.
Okay.
But it's also possible that it's all connected somehow. Maybe Sid is involved in something else, something much darker.
And if that's true, then who knows what else he might be hiding?
Exactly. This case could go way deeper than we ever imagined.
Oh man, this is heavy stuff.
It really is. And it shows just how important it is for investigators to be thorough. They can't afford to miss anything.
Right, every detail could be important.
Exactly. This has been a really intense deep dive.
It has.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around everything.
Me too. So many twists and turns.
Okay, so what final thoughts would you like to leave our listeners with?
Well, I think it's important to remember that cases like this aren't just isolated events.
What do you mean?
I mean, they point to bigger problems in our society, like domestic violence and coercive control,
Right.
and the fact that technology can be used for such harmful purposes.
Yeah, that's a scary thought.
It is.
Yeah.
And while we may never know for sure what happened to Vallette, her story can teach us a lot.
Like what?
Like how to be more aware of these issues, how to support victims of abuse, and how to speak out against these types of behaviors.
That's a powerful message.
It is, and it's something we all need to think about.
This case has definitely taken us to some dark places.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
But even in the face of tragedy, it's important to remember that there's always hope.
I agree. Hope for answers, hope for justice, hope for a world where these things happen less often.
Absolutely. And to our listeners, if you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, please reach out for help.
Yes, there are resources available and people who care. You don't have to go through this alone.
We'll be back next time with another deep dive, exploring a new case, uncovering hidden truths, and reminding you that the world is full of mysteries waiting to be solved.
Can't wait.
Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay engaged. It's true. We have to remember that these things can happen anywhere, to anyone.
Exactly. It's not just something you see on TV. It's a real problem, and it's often hidden in plain sight.
Exactly. So it's on all of us to be more aware and to help those who are trapped in these situations.
Absolutely. If you see something, say something.
This case has taken us to some pretty dark places.
Yeah, it's been heavy.
But even in the face of all this darkness, it's important to hold on to hope.
I agree. Hope for answers, for justice, for a world where these kinds of stories are less common.
And as we continue to think about Vallette and all the unanswered questions in this case, we have to remember that everyone's voice matters.
That's right. Everyone can contribute to the search for truth, even in cases that have gone cold.
So let me ask you straight up, what do you think happened to Vallette? What's your gut feeling based on everything we've discussed?
Honestly, it's impossible to say for sure without knowing all the facts.
Of course.
But the evidence we do have paints a pretty disturbing picture. The late report, the weird 911 call, the lies about the lawyer, the spyware, the threats.
It all points to Sid.
It really does.
Yeah.
But again, we have to try to stay objective. Consider all the possibilities.
So do you think the discovery of those other remains was just a coincidence? Or could they be connected to Vallette's disappearance in some way?
Ugh. That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's so hard to say.
I know. It's like every time we think we're getting close to the truth, something else pops up and throws us off track.
Exactly. It could be a total coincidence. Two unrelated cases that just happened to cross paths.
Okay.
But we can't ignore the possibility that it's all connected. Maybe Sid is involved in something much bigger and darker than we initially thought.
And if that's true, then it makes you wonder what else he might be hiding.
It really does.
No.
This case could go way deeper than we ever imagined.
It's chilling to think about.
It is, and it shows how important it is for investigators to be thorough. They can't afford to miss any details, no matter how small.
Every clue could be the key to solving the puzzle.
Exactly. This has been a really fascinating deep dive.
It really has.
Yeah.
And incredibly disturbing.
It's a case that stays with you.
So what are your final thoughts for our listeners?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway here is that these cases are more than just isolated incidents. They reflect broader societal issues like domestic violence and the ways technology can be misused.
Right. And they remind us that these things can happen anywhere, to anyone.
Exactly. So we all have a role to play in raising awareness, supporting victims, and speaking out against these kinds of behaviors.
Well said. And to our listeners, if you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, please reach out for help. There are resources available and people who care. You don't have to go through this alone.
Your voice matters. Don't be afraid to use it.
This is a case that will stick with us for a long time, and we hope it encourages all of you to think critically about the world around you and to never stop seeking truth and justice. We'll be back next time with another deep dive, exploring a new case, uncovering hidden truths, and reminding you that the world is full of mysteries waiting to be solved. Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay engaged.